watching the actual what was going on to the stage, but we are awaiting the final full risk assessment to be completed, and that is we can't do that till the building's actually finished. But I believe the seating for somewhere around about, if every space was taken in all of the various eateries and premises along the pavilion, of over 500.
Well, I've no further questions at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Mr. Bonham, did you wish to say something, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing. There's been a lot of conversation around this control system, and as I said, I do have some experience of one from some years ago. Is it possible that this thing could be set up so that if the limit was reached, that it did in fact cut, and I mean cut, the services to the Act, or wherever or whatever is producing the noise? Because historically as well, there's been instances where people can get around these things by taking different power supplies from different places and various things. The people that tend to set up these things can, when I say things, the acts themselves are quite experienced at getting around things like this. And I'm just wondering what controls you're going to put in place to make sure that their road crews or whatever they are, or themselves, there's no way that they can circumvent the control system. And maybe the best way to do that is that if they exceed the limit, then a red light flashes and the thing cuts off within so much time. I mean, that would seem to me to be appropriate.
I think I'm going to probably have to ask James to deal with that again. I think we already answered that presumably it's some sort of suppression system, is it, James, that if it approaches that level, it just suppresses the noise so it doesn't go over. But I think we've already answered this question once.
Yeah, that's what's put in. We're not putting a decibel kind of power cut-off system in. That's a completely different system. That's obviously one that you would put power relays in. I know the kind of one you mean. You have an ambient microphone in a space. It has a green light, amber light, red light. When it hits that, it cuts all the power off. That hasn't been proposed at all at this stage. That system's not going in. This system though that is going in is fully tamper-proof. Like I was saying before, without it, the system cannot work. It's completely. I understand what you mean. There are other alternative systems and from prior experience, like you say, yeah, older systems that you can do that to, if that makes sense. But this system is completely tamper-proof in that respect. You cannot, the system will not work without it. Literally, you just won't work, if that makes sense. And it's been racked in such a way that it can't be undone, if that makes sense. Like I said, we also have an AV technician on that site as well, who will be there to kind of control this at the same time.
Personally, I'd still rather see it cut off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's on the website. The number will be on the website, councillors.
Thank you. Jonathan, hand up. I believe maybe Jonathan David.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I adopt the objections that Mr. Judd has put forward? He's basically speaking still in my thunder. I happen to be his next door neighbour, and I share all of his concerns which he's already put to Mr. Smith. And I'm also grateful to Mr. Holland for raising various queries from a legal aspect. I'm not yet, and good morning, Mr. Smith, I'm not yet entirely certain when looking at the proposed conditions as they stood when I received them last night around about 5:30, there appeared to be a conflict between paragraphs 1 and 2, in the sense that paragraph 2 refers to live and recorded music being provided outdoors between 2300 and 2 AM. Now, paragraph 1 only deals with several days of the week, the maximum time being 1 AM. I appreciate that Mr. Holland has touched on this, but I'm still not clear exactly what is the situation, what is Park Dean actually saying as far as the proposed extended hours for live music.
Is it Mr. Davis? Sorry.
Mr. David, that's right, Jonathan
David,
Davis.
David, sorry, Mr. David. Yeah, I did clarify that, and I preempted the fact that it was wrong when I was doing my presentation. I don't know if you were on the call then, but I did preempt it that it should not say until 0200. It should simply say the areas where live and recorded music can be provided beyond 23. To be absolutely clear, the hours that we are seeking are those in number 1, midnight Thursday, 1 o'clock Friday, Saturday, midnight Sunday. Yeah,
Sorry.
at the start. There was a drafting error on my part, Mr. David.
Well, I happen to be a lawyer as well, and we were not perfect at the end of the day. But that's fine. Thank you for that, Mr. Smith. That's very helpful indeed. Would you agree with me that Traco Bay is very much a family holiday resort?
I haven't been to Traco Bay myself, but it is designed for families. It does have other events though, so it has these. It has the Elvis weekend. I don't know whether the guys, whether they can help me, whether they would describe it as a family-orientated weekend. If you've got Elvis or Rockstock, I don't know how much they are families. I don't know whether somebody can help me.
No, you can bring children. They're not solely for.
Oh, sorry, they're not solus. They're not solus.
At that age group.
The reason why I asked that question is simply this: that I mean, I happen to be a resident. I frequently walk through Traco Bay, walking my dog, and the great majority of people that I see there are clearly parents with young children. And I'm just wondering why there is the necessity to seek to extend or to create, I think perhaps would be the better way of putting it, extended hours for the pavilion. Why can't it be limited to 11 p.m.?
I've already explained. I don't understand. Were you late to the meeting? I went through that as well as to the rationale behind it. And yes, all right, there are, of course, families, many families, but we do run these other weekends, and it's for those weekends. And we already hold the Elvis, and we already hold the Rockstock weekends. And the problem is that having converted the Time Out adult nightclub into an Indian restaurant, there is a capacity issue, which is why we'd like to take some of the entertainment into the.
So sorry, Mr. Smith, I don't know something wrong with your mic, but you broke up and I really didn't catch the last.
In that the floor is actually reverberating with some of the building work going on beneath me at the moment. So I said I did address this, Mr. Dev. I don't know if you're late to the meeting, but I did address why they wanted the additional hours. We already have 11 o'clock here. We have
mic, but you broke up and I really didn't catch the last.
In that the floor is actually reverberating with some of the building work going on beneath me at the moment. So I said I did address this, Mr. Dev. I don't know if you're late to the meeting, but I did address why they wanted the additional hours. We already have 11 o'clock here. We have lost some of the capacity as a result of the Time Out adult nightclub becoming a Indian restaurant. And as a result of that, we do only have these 6 events is what we're seeking to apply for permission for. These are specialised weekends. They're not what you would regard perhaps as your normal family holidays, because they are one-off events. And we've had the Rockstock and the Elvis weekends for a number of years. I think how many years? 11 years, at least 11 years going on here. So they have run, and they do run in the Showdome and previously Time Out until 1-2 o'clock in the morning, because they are more niche events.
Yes, well, and that then leads me to this question. Why don't you, for these special events, have them in the Showdome?
We have them in all the venues, not just the Showdome. We have them in other venues as well. But I come again to the fact that one of the venues is now a restaurant.
Yes, but I'm sorry. I mean,
sorry, Mr. David, I'm not quite sure where these questions are going, because they're sort of operational questions as opposed to related to the licensing objectives.
Well, I hear what you say, but let's have an answer to the question. Why can't the events that you're saying should extend the hours beyond 11, why can't those events be in the Showdome?
They are in the Showdome as well. So they're in the Showdome and all of the other venues as well. Kelly, do you want to answer?
Yeah, so basically we have several stages at these events. So we have we have bands in the Showdome. Historically, we had live acts in the Time Out. And obviously, because we've lost that venue, we just need another space for like Elvis Weekend to be able to house those acts. So while we've got acts going on in the Showdome, obviously this park is a massive park. We never want to run over capacity, so we always have another stage as well. So that's why we generally wanted to use the pavilion for such events, to be able to house the people on the park and space out the people.
So yeah, all right, but then surely you're not running events in the Showdome when you have these other special events.
We are running, so somewhere Elvis would run in the Showdome and it will run in the other venues, and we'd like to run it in the pavilion as well.
All right. Okay, well, I appreciate at the end of the day, it is obviously for the licensing committee to make the decision there. Can I just ask you this, where is the limiter going to be situated?
James, can you deal with that one?
I can indeed, yeah. So in the main pavilion space, the stage, there is two secure rooms. One secure room is where it's classed as a distribution room, so it's where the power for that venue is stored as well. So it's in a locked room, and then there's a cabinet, which is also a locked cabinet, which is racked, which has got this piece of equipment in it as well.
So it's not going to be outside the pavilion, it's going to be inside the pavilion.
Yeah, the control aspect of it is within inside. It's in a lockable power distribution room within the pavilion to the side of the stage. Yes.
Okay. And then just finally, would it be possible for Park Dean, let's just assume for a moment that the licensing committee approved the amended proposals, would there be a further noise impact assessment done? Because obviously the current assessment is a theoretical assessment, is it not?
Again, Mr. David, I think we've addressed this, point raised by Mr. Judd. The system will be commissioned on an actual basis when everything is actually there, with the limiter being fitted, with shared regulatory services being there too.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Smith. Will there be a further impact assessment done then?
I have no idea. I don't know. I'd have to ask in acoustics. Do you do another survey after the system is already up and running? Presumably you're there at the commissioning of the system, I assume. And do you run a similar sort of sound map at that time? I don't know if that's you, Neil, or Victor.
The commissioning test is the assessment. Sorry, I don't know if you heard that. Is that?
Sorry.
The commissioning test is effectively the assessment. We've undertaken a predictive exercise, and the measurement-based assessment is taking theory and we're working in practice. It will be a test undertaken where there's actual sound, an actual person, an actual sound level meter, and actual sound waves in air. So that is the assessment.
I'm grateful, Ms. Morgan, and thank you very much, Mr. Smith, and thank you, Councillor Lewis. I have no further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. David. Mr. Charles Holland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a further question on conditions, I'm afraid, Mr. Smith, just arising out of Mr. David's questions. Could you have a look at page 17 of the agenda papers? There is actually a condition under the heading, the protection of children from harm. Condition 1 as it stands says the venues on the park, save for the adult nightclub, are family orientated, designed to attract families and provide family entertainment. And you are seeking, as I understand it, to amend that by deleting the word save for the adult nightclub. Is that right?
Yes, so the amended condition is the venues on the park are family orientated, designed to attract families and provide family entertainment.
And we're deleting also, or the proposal is to delete condition 3, no one under the age of 18 will be allowed in the adult nightclub. The logic, no doubt, being that there isn't an adult nightclub, so the condition is now redundant. Is there any age limit policy proposed in relation to the pavilion when it's trading until 1 in the morning, if the application is granted?
No, there isn't, Mr. Holland. We haven't had any representation from Police Trading Standards, the Protection of Children from Harm authority. So no, there is no policy. So
your client's interpretation is that the pavilion, even when trading on the event weekends, is a family orientated venue, because it would need to be
you could take your family there. Yes, you could sit outside in the pavilion if you really wanted your children to be up to that time, Mr. Holland.
I'm obliged. I was also going to mention that we were losing your sound quite a lot, and I think it was to do with the building works downstairs. It's stopped now, but I just a word for the wise. Don't let it start again, because we missed quite a lot of what you were saying. I mean, I think we all got the gist, but it's affecting your microphone when that's going on.
Right. Okay. I'm not sure whether we can get the builders to stop. That's the stuff.
I don't think any prejudice has been caused to your application, Mr. Smith, but I can't guarantee that won't happen if it comes back in. We were missing chunks of it, but getting the gist.
If you can't hear me, just perhaps somebody could just raise their hand and just let me know you can't hear me.
That's what I did, but it's taken till now until tell you.
I don't think I can see your picture on screen, Mr. Holland, but if you missed anything, councillors, or any responses to the questions, please just ask me again.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I think it's ideal time now to have a short 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and hear the objector's case. So it's 11:45 now, if everybody's back at 5 to 12. Okay, thank you.
Is entitled to address anything contained within their representation, and that can't be prevented. However, I would tell those present that the committee is unlikely to be assisted by hearing the same point repeatedly from people present. We're aware when the committee, when you, Chair, retire to consider your decision, you're going to consider obviously the representations you've heard and the written representations. So if duplication can be avoided, that would be wonderful. Although I don't think we can debar people if they're determined to make points that have already been made. Does that help?
Thank you very much, Mr. Holland. Just like to welcome Mr. Andrew Rees from Democratic Services for the second part of the meeting. Simon Judd, you have your hand up.
I do, thank you, Chair. I just want a bit of clarity, really. We've talked about the noise levels after 11 o'clock, and I just wanted to confirm, is the noise level before 11 o'clock no greater than after 11 o'clock?
The noise limiter levels are in the noise assessment report, but of course our application relates to after 11 o'clock, not before 11 o'clock.
Right, so does that mean 75 is the limit before 11 o'clock?
No, that is the limit after 11 o'clock.
And what will the limit be before 11 o'clock?
The recommendation in the report has been 79 dBA.
Okay, and will if that's too loud for the residents, will that be assessed by the council as part of their programme?
I'm assuming that when the system is commissioned and they sit down with the shared regulatory services, that they will look at all of the volumes during the day.
Okay.
I have to stress, Mr. Jordan, I'm sorry, going to be led by Mr. Holland as well here, is that our application, we already have a license to play music till 11 o'clock. The committee are considering this application beyond 11 o'clock, not pre 11 o'clock.
But your current application allows for playing music inside or outside?
It allows playing music inside till 2 o'clock, outside till 11 o'clock.
To what level currently?
There is no level set. There is no noise limiters in place.
Lovely. The other point I'd just like to make is that Parkdean took the decision to close their timeouts, or whatever the nightclub was called, and put an Indian restaurant there, therefore losing indoor space, whereby the residents had no issue because the noise was controlled. And now, almost in retrospect, you're applying for an outside extension because you have taken a decision to lose indoor entertainment space. Why should we bear the brunt of that noise when you had capacity for your entertainments before building this pavilion?
I don't know if that's a question. I guess that's a statement for your objection, Mr. Chubb.
No, it's a question.
Well, the application has been made. Sorry, can I just answer your question? You've asked me a question. So we've made this application, and I stress again that we apply for the application. We're quite entitled to do that with the safeguards that are built in and in agreement with shared regulatory services to limit the music beyond 11 o'clock in that additional area.
Okay.
The residents will not suffer from that application.
Good. That's all I need. My only thing would be the licensing. I mean, is there really a need for the park to have outside party until 1 o'clock? I've got one question on the DBA level, or the DB levels. Obviously, you're setting it at 75, or hoping to set it for 75 following tests. But does that allow for vocal noise? For example, if a band is playing a stereophonic song to finish off at 1 o'clock in the morning and 600 revelers take voice, those levels are likely to be seriously increased, but beyond the control of Parkdean. What's the process for that?
Well, clearly we can't control any noise from the customers who are in that area. However, and I'll probably have to refer on to the entertainments team here, any entertainment later on as you're closing down, it will be lighter entertainment. It will need to be, because you're getting later into the evening, sort of a wind down, if you like. So the sort of entertainment and the levels of the entertainment and what we're playing will be commensurate with the time of day. For instance, somebody gave me an example, I think last night, is you wouldn't start playing Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline at 11 o'clock at night.
So on the rock and roll weekend or the Elvis weekend, you're unlikely to finish with a rousing anthem late at night, which in my experience is not how that weekend works out. And you not being to that weekend, Mr. Smith, would have very little experience of that. Perhaps your colleague would.
I have not been to the weekend. I've never been to the weekend, and I couldn't comment on what they finish off with, Mr. Judd.
If I can just draw a point to the 28th of July last year, the sing-song that came with the closing of that dreadful set, in my opinion, was louder than the set itself. So I would suggest, knowing the entertainments that you're going to be putting on, that there could well be a crescendo of noise at 12 or 1 o'clock or later, who knows, if you're granted this application. But my concern is, what guarantees can Parkdean put in place to ensure that that type of entertainment doesn't happen late in the evening?
I can respond to that. The event that you're referring to on the 28th of July, I apologise, and I apologise about my client. It was too loud. It was in the square area, which is, I'm not sure how much further, but it's probably about another 150 to 200 metres towards residential properties away from the pavilion and where the stage will be. And that event finished at 20. I don't know, it was 20 past, between 20 past and 10:30. That music, Mr. Judd, was not going through a noise limiter.
Oh, accept that, thank you. So, but there still doesn't, if for example, an event is has a rousing finish, and I would suggest they will. I'm sorry to say, much as you can say that people are winding down, you're going to be playing slow songs for people to dance to. It's probably not the modern way. What guarantees can Parkdean put in place to guarantee to protect the noise levels after 11 o'clock? Don't to incorporate noise from the crowd.
That is down to crowd management and our choice of songs. And how we actually make sure, as I've said before, that there is this effectively winding down of the audience rather than you playing some great rendition at 1 o'clock in the morning that's going to get lots of people singing along to it. That's down to our own crowd management, because obviously we can't put a noise control system on the audience. I'm not aware. So we've obviously had the one with the karaoke, crowdioke that we had inside that area. I'm not aware of had any other complaints at all from any other of these specialised weekends. That crowdioke that you refer to, Mr. wasn't one of these weekends I'm talking about, but I do appreciate it was too loud that night. So to answer your question, it's down to our crowd management.
Okay. You've received no complaints because all the other events were held indoors, which is now an Indian restaurant, hence you're looking for outdoor capacity. So hence there were no complaints because there was no noise, because it was contained. The noise control of the crowd, does the listening posts, does that detect that noise as well?
Just to answer one question, we do have our... Sorry, to answer one question, we do have entertainment. We have it up to 11 o'clock at the Coast Restaurant, so we do have other outdoor entertainment. In terms of crowd noise, I don't know, actually. I'd have to ask probably acoustics if when the noise checks are being made at the noise points 1 and 2, whether that would also pick up any music from people, noise from people who are in the pavilion.
Could acoustics answer that question? If there's a rousing rendition of a song, will your monitoring equipment detect that the noise has gone above 75 dB and suppress it accordingly?
If I can speak, the commissioning test will be set for the music noise level and to set the limit, and that is related to music only. However, I understand that Parkdean are doing the checks and noise monitoring during the events, and that will be picked up by the sound level meters. Everything will be picked up by the sound level meters during the actual events.
Okay, so the monitors will pick up if there's a loud rendition of a song from the crowd. At that point, will the system suppress that music down from 75 to 65 to quieten the crowd, or will it maintain its level?
Well, it can't suppress the crowd because it's the crowd. What it can do, however, of course, is say, look, we can hear people out here. At this noise monitoring point, it's inappropriate. You need to play different music, so we can change the actual crowd management as a result of those noise monitor checks.
Okay. Perhaps if Parkdean could put something together that gives us as residents some confidence in that would be useful. Or if in the event, if it carried on at a loud, would Parkdean pull the plug on it?
Well, would you mean stop it completely if we just couldn't stop?
I do.
Otherwise, we're going to get either a review of our premises licence, or we're going to get a noise abatement notice slapped on us.
Well, I think the response from the residents will be fairly swift if noise levels are high. So, just gives you an idea.
Okay.
I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you. Right. As I said, we will now go into the objectors case. So have any objectors who wish to speak, please? Councillor Jonathan Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So obviously my objections were based on the vagueness of the original application. I'm not going to go into why it was vague. I'm sure Parkdean and Treacle Bay had conducted themselves properly, but I was concerned. I received various concerns from residents in my capacity as a town councillor over what did a licence till 2 o'clock in the morning mean till Sunday till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm pleased that as I expected, that this would just be a broader licence, but will be retained within certain events within the within their remit for their events. I am still slightly concerned that music will go on till 1 o'clock in the morning. I say it whimsically, I suppose. Yes, New Year's Eve. If everyone rings in Happy New Year and then all of a sudden everything shuts down initially, I suppose that's probably impractical. So I'm pleased that Treacle Bay has listened and have started to reduce their hours. I'm pleased to hear that there will be noise abatement procedures in place, such as the noise control and things. If and it is a big if, I suppose. I'm not a technical expert. If you can assure us that no resident within Newton or East Central, for that matter, will not be able to hear any music, I suppose that relieves my concerns. On to my second point would be on to point 6. You said direct telephone number and email address for the premises to be published through the Environmental Health and Licensing Authority. I was wondering whether you could amend that and pass it on to the Town Council as well. Obviously, the political setup in Porthcawl, we're controlled by 2 bodies, one Bridgend County Borough Council and the Town Council. Newton will be represented by 3 town councillors and 1 borough councillor. East Central, under the new provisions, will be represented by 6 town councillors and 2 borough councillors. It will be interesting to know, to have this information, so as and when any councillor, be that a town council or a borough councillor, receives a complaint, they have the ability to pass those complaints on to the relevant authorities and Parkdean itself. I'm pleased to hear that the events will be limited to the Hat Blue. So on those, and it is still a big if. Residents don't hear any noise at all, and all these barriers will be put in place. I will hold my objection, but I'm pleased to see that there has been a scale down on it. But on a point of not being being diplomatic, Treacle Bay is good for Porthcawl. It does bring a lot of employment to the town. I, in fact, had my first job in Treacle Bay way back when, 20 odd years ago, as my wasn't here. You have in history been good neighbours to the respective wards and the town as a whole. I hope that relationship is maintained and that all the relevant controls are there, and that this won't be a stepping stone to extending licenses further. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Any councillors got questions for Councillor Pratt, please? No. Anybody else at all? Any questions for Councillor Pratt?
Councillor, just to say one thing, having taken instructions on that, we're more than happy to provide the town council with the contact details if Mr. Pratt could just provide us with details of how we do that.
No problem.
Okay, thank you for that. No other objectors?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to speak, please.
Oh, okay. Mr. David?
It's not Mr. David, it's Ken Bonham.
Oh, all right. Okay.
I've been resident in Porthcawl now for over 40 years, and I've had businesses and I've had residences throughout the town. And the prevailing wind in this town is from southwest into the town and goes across Treco into Newton. So anything that happens in that caravan park ends up in Newton, and it ends up in our back gardens and in our front rooms if the windows are open. Okay. Now that's been the case for many years, and for many years it's been relatively controlled. We've had instances where the problem has been excessive, and they've been mentioned today. Okay, but it actually goes back even to the mid-60s when Fife Robertson did a piece on BBC Wales and talked about the effect and the negative effect that this caravan park had on the town of Porthcawl. And over the years, those negative effects have become apparent through things that have been reported. Some haven't been reported, but the things that have been reported, unfortunately, including murder, including serious assaults, including other nefarious activities that are driven predominantly, I would suggest, by alcohol and late night alcohol. And yet again, here we are now talking about allowing this organisation to just allow another venue of hundreds of people to excessively drink until the early hours of the morning and then go about their business.
Mr. Bonham, sorry, can I just interrupt? This is an application to vary the licence in the terms Mr. Smith set out, changing conditions, changing internal layout and adding regulated entertainment. My committee can only deal with the likely effect of the variation. It isn't a review of the underlying license, and there is no extension has been sought in relation to further provision of alcohol.
600 people in a venue of this type.
But I'm going to be advising my committee that they can't have regard to representations about increases in alcohol supply, because this application doesn't deal with an increase in alcohol supply. So you need to confine your submissions to what is going on in relation to the application.
Okay, apologies. In terms of the application then, we've heard certain other representations, certainly from Simon Judd, that the noise level gets louder as entertainment goes on. That is a fact, whether it's Tom Jones or Tom Dooley, and whether it's the CIA or whether it's this place in Treco. The acts will start off at a relatively low level and they will build momentum and sound to satisfy the crowd. That is the way they work. They start off slow and they end up fast. And that is, and always has been, and always will be the way they work. And so the problem with the sound and having lack of control over the sound generated by the crowd is a major problem. And therefore, I would suggest that if the control of the audience and the sound produced by the audience cannot be guaranteed, then I feel that this application should be completely thrown out. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Bonham. Any questions from Mr. Bonham, please? Has the applicant any questions, Mr. Bonham, please?
No, I mean, I'll just perhaps raise a couple of points in my summing up regarding the negative effects that the park has, but no, I'll raise that in my summing up.
Okay, thank you. And anybody else have any questions for Mr. Bonham? Okay, thank you. Mr. Jonathan David.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. My objections are already set out in type form, which of course the applicant has seen. I've raised various other matters in my cross-examination. I'm not going to repeat any of those. I just want to make it quite clear in my own mind that in relation to the specific days, I think there's a maximum of 24 or 26 during the year, that the sound levels throughout the use of the pavilion will be limited to 75, and it's not just limited to 75 after 11 o'clock. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, perhaps you could just clarify that point with me.
There are different levels during the days because there are different codes of practice governing how loud music should be at nearest noise sensitive points within the code of practice on concerts. So they use that guidelines, which means that it needs to be lowered as the day wears on. I have to stress again that we are applying, and this application is confined to noise levels beyond 2300 because that's what we're applying for the variation for.
I'm grateful, Mr. Smith, for that. So one of my major concerns, therefore, is this, that when we had that concert last year, which I appreciate Park Dean apologised about, the noise levels were constantly excessively high throughout the day, once the concert started. And so I am concerned that as far as this application is concerned, that the 75 decibel line, if I can put it that way, or limit, is only going to apply after 11. I would respectfully suggest it should apply throughout the day as far as the pavilion is concerned. Those are my representations.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, have you any questions for Mr. David, please? No? The applicant?
No, thank you.
No? Nobody else? Okay, then, if that's the case, we go into the closing statement from the objectors first. If any of you wish to make a statement?
Chair, before we go into that, we do have a hands up from Mr. Victor Valeron. I'm not sure if that's a legacy hand or not.
I believe Mr. Valeron should have lowered his hand.
I think I'm happy to accept as the applicant's list, councillors. It's a legacy hand. I think I've never heard of the word legacy hand, but can we treat it as a legacy hand?
Apologies if it was up, but no, I didn't have to add anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the objectors, anybody wish to make a closing statement, please? Councillor Jonathan Pratt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to press on that the responsibility for Treacle Bay Holiday Park to have a healthy relationship with its residents, just not in Newton and across the whole of Porthcawl. Satisfied apart from last year, but I suppose everyone was learning from the implications of COVID that Treacle Bay has maintained those relationships reasonably well over the many years of their time in Porthcawl. I just would like to bear on them that any changes in their applications are met with good faith and to maintain the good relationship that we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. David, did you wish to say something?
Thank you, Councillor. No, I'm quite happy with what I've already said, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now the closing statement from the applicant, please.
Thank you, councillors. Just to pick up on a couple of points, and I mean, Mr. Bonham referring to murders back many years ago, and I am grateful. Thank you, Mr. Pratt, for you putting much more context onto that, and your representation refers to the fact of the good relationships that the town councils enjoyed with Treco Bay, and we have to live in peace and harmony with our local residents. We live next door to each other, and we're not here, and it's not in our interest to cause disturbance. We want to be good neighbours, and therefore I do take some exception to the fact that Mr. Bonham says we just don't have any good effect. We do have a positive effect on the local economy, and we have enjoyed good working relationships in the past. And I do apologise again. I think it's probably the third time I've said for that incident in July. It wasn't done through a noise limiter. It was done on that square bit of the car park. There was nothing illegal about it. It was just done, and it was too loud. Councillors, just to stress again, I think Mr. Bonham's referred to this. We are not making any application to extend the hours for alcohol here. It may be we'll come back with an application in due course there's a tiki bar in the pavilion, and we may look to apply for alcohol late in 11 o'clock there, but we're not doing this today, so there is no application to make any extension of hours to the alcohol. Let's just be clear on that for you to consider today. The opening point is simply to allow the corridor between east and west in the pavilion to be used by people so they can walk through without needing to walk around. I'm sure that Mr. Holland will advise you on your policy, and I would ask you to have another look again at paragraph 5.16, which is helpful. Because it does say that the council themselves, you find it helpful and useful if we indicate a specified number of events a year if we are applying for music at more noise sensitive times. And of course, your policy also at paragraph 12 refers to the fact that there is a key protection built into the Licensing Act through the review process. But that's not all that my client risks through this. There could be a review of the premises licence to remove any permission for entertainment. It could be even worse than that, review of the licence in its entirety to include a review on alcohol sales, etc. So there's all sorts of mechanisms, but not just that. There's also powers in the Noise Act, 1996, councillors, whereby warning notices can be issued. Fines can then be issued if they're breached, and actually equipment seized. That the whole of the equipment could be taken away if by your regulatory services team. We also have protection in the Environmental Protection Act, were we to create a statutory noise nuisance, then a noise abatement notice is served. So there's plenty of ways in which we can be held to account here, but councillors, we don't want to get to that point. This is about the prevention of public nuisance, not causing it in the first place. And I would ask Mr. Holland if you could make sure you do refer the committee to paragraphs 9.12 and paragraphs 9.15 of the guidance, which is the statutory guidance, which is actually repeated in your agenda. So to be clear, in terms of any suggestion there's going to be more crime and disorder, the police have made no representation to the application, and the police, of course, are your main source of advice on matters relating to the promotion of the crime and disorder objective. But more particularly, I'd also ask you to have a look at paragraph 9.15, which states that as a licensing authority, you can reasonably expect other responsible authorities to intervene within the remit of that authority. And they give the example that it would be reasonable to expect the local authorities exercising environmental health functions to make representations where they are concerned about noise nuisance. Now, that's exactly what Shared Regulatory Services did. They did consider the application. They made a representation. We had dialogue with them, we had Teams meetings, we discussed conditions, they saw the noise management plan, the noise assessment survey, and as a considered they withdrew their objection on the basis of those conditions, the noise management plan. And also, can you still hear me? Because there's some work started up again, councillors. I've nearly finished, but the work's just started. So it is very important that they have considered this application and have decided that they will not make a representation. But I stress that limiter, it will be fitted, it will be commissioned, and it will be agreed with the with your shared regulation. Can you hear me, councillors?
Yeah, just about.
Right, I'm sorry, the work started at possibly the worst time possible, so I'm moving closer to the camera. I'd also ask Mr Holland just refer you to the case of Manchester City Councillor Taylor, and I'm sure Mr Holland's more than familiar with that you are not here to review our existing licence. We've applied to vary it to permit entertainment, live and recording music between 11 and 2 o'clock, and it's that aspect I'm concentrating on, of course. You're not here to review what we do before 11 o'clock. Yes, we didn't do a great job of it on the 28th of July, but you're not reviewing what we currently have. You're looking at what we would like to be granted for this licence and impose any conditions that are appropriate and proportionate. And on that point, those conditions that we've been through in some detail now, I would suggest on the balance of probabilities before you, particularly the fact that your shared regulatory services department are not objecting, they will be there and they will be working with us in terms of the limitation of noise to ensure that it is inaudible in the nearest noise sensitive premises after 11 o'clock with a window open. And on that basis, almost alone, councillors, there will not be any public nuisance caused to the residential dwellings. In terms of crowd noise, yes, we were doing those noise checks anyway at the other points, and yes, we have and will have a crowd event management plan because, as we said, and you've heard it from us, it's recorded. You can't be having somebody doing a rendition of Sweet Caroline at 5 to 1 in the morning before they stop. So there will be a wind down and crowd management in terms of the event itself. So I do commend this application to you as amended. I appreciate it as amended, and I thank Councillor Todd for mentioning that we have obviously revised it. We wanted, if you like, the freedom to have these events without notification and have this freedom, but we do also appreciate what your policy says and that there is a lot more certainty in terms of the hours and days we've now applied for. So unless anybody's going to text me and say I need to say something else, councillors, I will leave it to that, and many thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Number 6 on the procedure is advice from licensing officer and or legal officer. Well, obviously we will be adjourning to speak to the legal officer. So have the councillors any questions they need to ask on licensing policy, please, from Yvonne? No, in that case, we will adjourn to consider the application. If Mr. Charles Holland could help me out here, rather than keep people hanging around, how long do you think it will take for us to make the decision and for you to type up the outcome, so we can call everybody back?
Chair, do you anticipate making a decision today and handing the decision down today, or reserving it and sending it out by email? What is your anticipation?
Certainly, I'd like to make the. I think we can make the decision today. If the objectors can provide any sort of email addresses, then probably it would be best to email it out.
If I can interrupt, I think all the objectors have sent their email addresses into the council. So yes, I would certainly welcome the decision via email.
Okay.
I agree with that. I agree with that as well.
I also agree with that. I just hope that the due course gives it plenty of airtime so you can make the right decision.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are all in agreement that we adjourn to make the decision, and everybody happy to have the response or the results by email.
Thank you very much, councillors.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that we will now adjourn. So, Andrew?
Yes, yeah, if I can ask Michael to